The trade deficit. When we look at things, we try to grasp what it means. Our eyes are restless. We look at one thing and then another, but then the image moves. We have no idea what's happening. Why can't we understand what's going on? With the U.S. trade deficit, it's life and death to figure out what's going on. If we focus on one thing and then step backwards and backwards, we can see exactly where we stand, in the middle of the graveyard of all previous empires, bankrupt. How did the United States get in this situation? As we look at the Federal Reserve's own trade statistics, we can see the United States runs consistently deep in the red. And the only thing that seems to close our trade deficit with the world is to have a global depression. This, of course, is another sign of a declining empire when all it can do is depress all world trade. This has happened many times in the past with Rome and with Britain, just to give two major examples. Here is a trade chart with our dearest friends to the north, the Canadians. We sell them 28 billion worth of goods over the course of a year. Isn't that wonderful? Except for, of course, recently, because all trade is down. One would think this is a wonderful thing, except it's not. Something is terribly wrong with these statistics. Let's go look at Canada's trade surplus with the United States. Canada happens to run a considerable surplus with us. It's always at least 10% more than our trade with them. Over time, this piles up. The green line here, the green box, shows the differential in scale. The U.S. graph that we saw previously is the green area here. The Canadian graph has to be much bigger because of their trade surplus. Now let's go to Mexico. We do a lot of trade with Mexico. It's been going up and up and up during the same time frame. My goodness, trade is a wonderful thing. Look at how it's enriched both Oz and Mexico. But then again, when we look at Mexico's trade with us, we see the exact same problem we see with Canada. Namely, Mexico runs a huge trade surplus with the United States, even bigger than Canada's. It's because they also sell us energy, just like Canada. They sell us oil, natural gas, all kinds of raw materials. So, of course, we run a considerable but not too big trade deficit with them. And you might say, well, what's the big deal with that? It's only a small thing. Except here is our trade with Germany. We defeated Germany in World War II. And look, we do a lot of business with Germany. It's quite considerable. It's $5 billion worth, which is a lot less than with Canada and Mexico, but still, business is business. But then let's go see how Germany's doing business with the United States. Again, we have the same problem. Germany has a considerable advantage. They do almost $10 billion worth of business with us, while we do considerable less. The green box here shows exactly how much smaller the US scale is compared to the German scale. They run a bigger deficit than either, a bigger surplus with us compared to Canada and Mexico, our NAFTA friends. Now let's go to Japan. As you can see here, we've done a lot of business with Japan, but after 1995, it's pretty much either been stable or falling. It's not been growing at all. Something is terribly wrong. The Japanese say, we're having this depression. We've had this depression before you had your depression. Ha ha ha. We can't buy your stuff. On the other hand, when we look at Japan's trade statistics with us, that green box is even smaller than the one with the Germans. The scale here is, again, the same as Germany, which is $10 billion worth of trade, which has collapsed recently, of course. It is rather peculiar that our empire is ultimately going into debt to the two other empires we defeated in World War II at great cost and trouble. One wonders. Here's the graph of American business going to China. It started off in the 1970s and grew at a good clip. It went all the way up to $7 billion a year in trade, though that's also fallen off the cliff. This is a pretty steep hockey stick type chart. You must think, wow, this is a good thing. Look at how our business with China has mushroomed. But when we compare it to how China's doing business with us, look at the green scale here, that little box. That's the scale of difference. $8 billion is down near the bottom. They have $36 billion in trade with the United States. That is just complete insanity. How on earth can we run such an immense trade deficit with China? This is the question that we have to ask, because people negotiate these trade deals, and for some reason they're unable to understand the nature of what a graveyard is. That is, they must figure out the difference between red ink and carrying a surplus. They must understand that we have to negotiate with people or else we will die. If we negotiate in such a way that the status quo remains the way it is now, with the United States running in the red all the time, this is where we're going to be, here in the ground, alongside all other empires such as the British Empire, the Russian Empire of the USSR, Nazi Germany, the Japanese warlords, and so on. We can't do this. Thank you. This is Culture of Life News.